Hello, I'm Tony Sloman and I'm sitting here watching Who with the director of Who, Jack Gold. And this is the pre-title sequence, Jack, isn't it? Where was it shot?
It was shot outside Munich. Most of the filming, apart from the week in Miami, was shot in and around Munich in Germany. And I think this is probably near an airfield or country road, something over which we obviously had a lot of control over.
And you shot this? There was no second unit?
As far as I remember, there was no second unit. It was conceived as one particular long shot, revealing the barbed wire frontier post at the end.
And the stunt coordinator was Remy Julien, who'd done the Italian job.
That's right. Wonderful, wonderful coordinator and driver.
And although it doesn't say so, and it was shot in Germany, is it actually meant to be Germany with the sectors?
I think it is. It's not Checkpoint Charlie, which is quite built up, and I've done films involving that before. It was supposed to be a frontier post between East Germany and West Germany.
Now, the Barry Levinson credited as producer there is not the director of Rayman and Diner, is it?
No, it isn't. He's was an independent producer who used to be Mel Brooks's agent, and produced a film called Catholics that I first met him on, which featured Trevor Howard and Martin Sheen. It won a Peabody Award in America, which was absolutely not this sort of film at all.
And was that the first time you worked with Trevor Howard, who we'll meet again in this film?
No, yes, it must be. I think I did Aces High, in which Trevor appeared.
After this?
No, sorry. Catholics was the first time I played with Trevor. And then after this, I think he certainly appeared in Aces High, which was 75, 76, I think.
And as we've seen, he has also starring billing there. But was there another actor in line for that role?
Yes, at one time we were thinking of Kurt Jürgens, who I met and talked to about the part, and I can't remember the reason, but he declined. And because of the previous association Barry and I had with Trevor on Catholics, where his accent was Irish and not supposed to be some sort of mixture of German and Russian, we thought he'd be great. And of course he's such a wonderful actor that lucky we were enough to get him.
Well, he's marvellous, and we'll discover that accent, because he doesn't usually do accents, as the film progresses. Now, it's a film there, it says, from Lion International. That was the then British Lions sales team. Was it, in fact, a British Lion picture?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that. I never get involved in that part of filmmaking. I just give me a schedule and the budget, and then I'll get on with it. But don't tell me about how the money's raised.
I think that's very reassuring to hear. But Barry Levinson, I think, did cross-collateralise this film with another film, the
Internecine Affair, which I think was filmed at about the same time that Ken Hughes directed. Very good film.
Right. Now, this is our first sight of what would be called, I guess, the title character, Who.
It's good to be back at last. My name's Finchley. I'm
It's in the great robot tradition, isn't it? Going all the way back to Metropolis, or Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, I suppose so. The look of the head was quite carefully delineated in the book by Algis Budrys, and we tried to follow that description quite closely.
It's a very impressive reveal the first time you see him there, isn't it?
I think so. We built up the anticipation of the subsidiary characters as they gradually become aware of something strange is happening. We only glimpse him as a little reflection at a wide angle before he actually comes right up to camera. So it's quite a strong introduction to our main character.
And the actor is Joseph Bova. Is that his voice as well?
Yes. I mean, the description of his voice is not necessarily being recognisable from the original character that he's supposed to be's voice, as goes through various medical and electronic adjustments to give him a voice. So it's, but that's the actual actor talking, Joe Bova, yes.
After what they must have done to you.
Dr. Martino is just saying what he feels is expected of him, Mr. Haller.
Elliot Gould, a major star at this time, fresh off MASH, an actor who actually had the cover of Time magazine. Was he the first casting choice?
As far as I know, yes. He was certainly part of the package when I was asked to come and direct it.
And you were coming off the National Health at the time, and then there was Catholics.
Yeah. This was quite a different sort of film for me, which is one of the things that was intriguing for me. Basically sort of social realist films of some sort or another, up to that point, both in television and features. So the idea of a vaguely, I suppose, science fiction film and a spy film was a new area for me, and I was, felt quite challenged by it and intrigued by it.
I think it's just probably worth mentioning in your career that after Who, you went on to Man Friday with Peter O'Toole and Richard Roundtree, and then probably generally regarded as your most popular and distinguished work, The Naked Civil Servant with John Hurt.
That's right.
And then I think it was Aces High.
Yeah, Aces High was, I think must have been after 1975-76 was Aces High, yes. Which again was a different sort of film for me. It was a World War I action piece, and I'm not basically an action director, and so that was quite a departure.
Okay, we'd like to start this interview in about an hour. You want to come to my office?
That was Journey's End, wasn't it?
Absolutely, set in the air. As someone said, Journey's End was set in the trenches and it was about claustrophobia. And the producer, Benny Fish, said, what could be more claustrophobic than a one-seater pilot plane? So couldn't argue with the theory.
Let's look at the what would be a set, but this looks like location.
Absolutely,
You're not in the
yes.
studio here.
I don't think there were any sets that we built in this film. I think everything was location in Munich or Miami.
There's a lot of handheld photography in this, consciously to give it realism, or
well,
because
it's basically two things. One, I wanted that shot of tracking through the various corridors and stairs and everything else. To do that, not handheld, would have been very difficult. It does give a sense of realism, and I wanted to get that feeling of being part of the scene rather than having to set up a series of cuts and angles and all that sort of thing. I wanted to go with the characters into that basement.
And you're working with a German crew?
Yes, Petrus Schlump, I think is the cameraman's name, a very nice guy. I think he was originally from East Germany or even Poland, possibly, I'm not sure, but he was very good.
You don't open that door for anything, not if he says...
Looking at Joseph Bova's makeup, Dr. Martino, can you tell us more about the makeup, how long it took to apply and how it was decided upon?
Yeah, I mean, one is, as I say, there's the description in the novel that we tried to follow, this sort of spheroid, metallic look. And we took a long time discussing it, and Barry was saying maybe it should be something like a hockey mask. And we went to Colin Arthur, who was a very good makeup expert, had done this sort of work before, and he created drawings and designs, and we talked about it, because it had to be functional. The actor had to get in it and be able to talk and not have too many inconveniences during the day, because it took a long time to apply. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was a lot of patience required by the actor, because once it's on, it's difficult to take off and then reapply. So it's an extra burden for the actor. And all that you can really reveal of his thoughts are through his voice and intonation, and even that's restricted, and what we can see of his eyes. So it's a tough job for an actor.
Joseph Bova is not well known. How did he come to be cast in it?
We had casting sessions in New York, and I think he came from basically the musical theatre side of New York. He was a very funny, versatile guy. I think Elliot knew him, because Elliot was a song and dance man before he became film acting. In fact, I remember seeing Elliot in London in a stage version musical of On the Town, where he was a hoofer.
Of course, with Don Mackay.
That's right. So I think he and Joe, I suspect they knew each other. I can't remember exactly. But Joe came from New York theatre rather than American films. And the other actors were all cast out of New York. I mean, the American actors.
Their very unfamiliarity lends the film, now with hindsight, a degree of strangeness. I think only James Noble is really recognisable.
Yeah, but it gives him a credibility too. It gives us sort of, I know we know Elliot, and apart from he and Trevor, there are no really known faces. Some of a couple of the German actors have done character parts we're a bit familiar with, but mostly there's a certain amount of similitude. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Truthfulness about
Indeed.
the look of the characters.
That's it, yes.
No, that's too long, Doctor. Colonel Azorin, look closely at what's lying there.
3 or 4 months is too long, Doctor. I need him sooner than that. Is his brain damaged?
It's a miracle, but physically, no. The shock may have done some damage. He must lose most of his sensory organs. There his brain's contact with the outside world.
Looks like a bit of dodgy post-sync there.
Well, I was going to ask you about the revoicing, because I suspect it's dodgy post-sync perhaps, but it's certainly been revoiced and it doesn't quite match
It's the only scene where I was aware of being post-sync. Do you know, I honestly can't remember. If it is post-sync, it's probably by David De Keyser, who was the great post-sync voice.
Yes, his voice is very recognisable later on, where he's less in character, more himself. But you had a wonderful sound editor. You had Colin Miller on this picture.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the great sound editors.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things about the pace of the film, which is sort of, in some ways, apart from the action sequence, a bit metronomic and relentless. The difficulty was there's a lot of quite tricky information to get across. And every theory put up is counterbalanced by a counter-theory. So to understand the various assumptions of who Martino is or isn't has to be carefully laid out and understood. And the counter-arguments have to be understood. So to rattle through them, my suspicion was it would have got in the way of trying to understand the essence of the film. Was he or was he not the man he claimed to be?
I think that's very successfully achieved, if I may say so. This actor is Lyndon Brooke, who, the son of the great Clive Brooke and the brother of Faith Brooke, who's still with us.
Yeah.
He was in a lot of supporting roles in rank films during the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Never seemed to achieve any stardom other than in B-movies.
I don't know why that is. I mean, he was a very, very competent actor and a very good screen actor. Maybe he didn't have the look that would take him on to leading performances and never quite maybe achieved the great character roles, the second lead, if you like. But he was absolutely reliable and would deliver on the button for, a performance that was required, intelligent and sensitive.
Good to hear it.
Yeah, Ivan Desny, who was a more familiar face, I suspect, for characters, was also, fine actor, but his English was very good.
Well, interestingly, of course, he is here again in an identity crisis picture, and this is an actor that English-speaking audiences got to know through 2 films, both about the same subject. He was in both Anastasia and is Anna Anderson Anastasia, the Lily Palmer version. So he's obviously the man you get for identity crisis pictures, and I'm sure he's immediately spotted by regular cinema goers as someone who can prove that this man is or is not who they say he is.
Yeah, he's a very suave, cultivated, assured actor. I'm not sure he may have been Austrian, I'm not sure. Ivan Desny or stroke Hungarian, it sounds vaguely connected with that part of Europe.
The head
Now, this explanation that's coming up is very convincing in that wonderful science fiction exposition way, but this is more detailed than usual. Is it based on anything, or is it pure fiction?
As far as I know, it's based on the novel. But I think that certain things were obviously happening. I mean, prosthetics, body transplants, brain scans, all those things, and electronic movements of limbs and robots and all that were not unknown. So I think the Algis Budrys obviously cottoned on to what was not in the atmosphere, but in general knowledge of artificial robotic systems.
Some lovely close-ups here where you actually see the real eyes.
Yeah. Of course, when I did Medusa Touch with the Richard Burton character, who suffered very heavy head injuries, he was bandaged up, so all you could see from him were his eyes and hear some of his voice. So it was. I found myself repeating the same sort of situation when we did that.
I think that's called auteurism, when you start repeating yourself.
Oh, don't, please.
This there was a lot of this at the time. Most notably, Patrick McGowan's television series *The Prisoner* dealt with identity crisis, and change of physical being with chemical and scientific effects. This is very, very fashionable then.
I only saw The Prisoner occasionally, so I'm not familiar enough with it to talk about that.
What I find very interesting is that this whole scene is played without music. If it were on TV today, it would be covered with it. So.
Well, one of my bête noirs at the moment is the amount of music we have, particularly on television programmes. I think music is virtually non-stop and is appalling in its overuse. I'm very particular about the use of music. I only like to use it not as muzak, but to actually dramatise and point up particular parts of a film, because I think it outlives its function and use appallingly, particularly in television at the moment. There's hardly a frame that can be sustained on the screen without some sort of musical accompaniment, and it loses all value.
It's as though there's no respect for the audience.
Yeah, they patronise the audience. Yeah, it's appalling.
I just want to point out there were two marvellous close-ups of Lyndon Brooke there. You get really close to him as he's peering at the robot man.
It's a very good score, I think.
It's John Cameron, who I think is superb. I've had the pleasure of working with him a few times, and I think he was Oscar nominated for A Touch of Class. Very underrated as a film composer.
Yeah.
On the two films I did with him, Driftwood and Two Endor Wars, he brought so much to the picture. And he's also a very good screenwriter.
Is he?
We've
I
worked
didn't know
together
that,
trying to get his scripts off the ground, which is it's very difficult to do, because he's known as a composer.
Yeah.
And more importantly, he's known as the arranger of Les Miserables, which brings him in a pretty regular income all over the world.
He's not a miserable any longer.
Not at all.
Now your right arm. Can you feel your fingers?
I think it's all the detail that we go into of the actual, the corpse or the non-corpse, of movement and close-up and registration and the effect on other people, and which build up the intensity of what we try to accomplish in the film, rather than play loose shots. I don't do many close-ups in the film, particularly in the explanatory sequences, because I found that it was interfering with our understanding of them. So I saved cutting for dramatic effect rather than informational effect in the dialogue sequences.
Now, your editor was Norman Wanstall, was he not? Norman, of course, won the sound editing Oscar for Goldfinger.
Of course.
And became an editor in this period. His other films include Mike Sand's Joanna. But he tired of the politics of editing, and he became a plumber and a fitter in Wales,
Probably a very regular and lucrative profession.
where I interviewed him recently, and he's retired now.
We edited this in Munich, I remember.
I always have problems with people in blue suits against blue doors where somebody else is in on a blue bed, and I wonder if this is production design, accident, deliberate, or stock.
It certainly, I don't think, was deliberate. So I suspect one has to say that was it. It wasn't deliberate, either in intent, or I suppose I could have looked at it and said, my God, give him a different suit or paint the door. Sometimes I'm not as aware as I ought to be of the colour content of films. I'm much more interested in the composition. So I suppose in some ways I have a slight blind spot, like the colour of his jumper against the wall.
Indeed. But nevertheless, it does give the whole thing a wonderful metallic feel, which stems from the robot itself.
Yeah. There's a sort of sheen, isn't there?
Yes, coldness.
See, one of the interesting things is that you get the allegedly real Martino next to Elliot Gould. So it was important never to see the real Martini, the Joe Bova character, in the same standing up position with anybody else that we've seen with the allegedly fake Martino later on. So who never appears with Elliot, so you never get that height disparity, but he does appear with Trevor. And I think we tried to arrange things so the difference in height with Joe Bova and the guy who plays Frank Hayward is not too apparent, because it might have been a giveaway. But we tried to maintain the possibility of the identity switch to the very, very end of the film.
Very, very interesting. So anybody who's watching now and listening to us has to look at it again with that knowledge after you've already seen it the first time.
Yeah. Should I have not said it?
No, I think the audiences will be fascinated once they own a copy of this, to go through it several times and work out when it's him, when it isn't, and who it is, because then you're living the plot of the film.
Yeah. What's interesting is that every argument that's posed has a counter-argument. It's immediately knocked down as with an alternative interpretation, which goes right the way through it. Every question the audience wants to ask is asked on film. So it's satisfying it as a puzzle labyrinth as it could be.
It's also very courageous plot telling in at this period when plots were getting more and more simplistic because of television drama.
It's like in The Spy That Came In From the Cold, the double plotting that went on to ruin the Oscar Werner character. It was very subtle and controlled, but brilliant. And of course the effect of that head on the cinema audience, which goes after the beginning, has to be accentuated each time a new character comes in and sees it. So we have to play those effects on the man, like this character, the scientist on the left, who sees Martino for the first time with the head. So all those shots are sort of predictable but necessary.
Well, you do it very well.
Yeah. I mean, all this exposition, again, is in a 3-shot, which is a longish take, and the characters just move around gently changing position. The importance was to get the message over and not distract the audience with too many cuts and close-ups where it's not necessary, because they're all interplaying with each other. There would be no advantage in intercutting closer shots, I don't think.
Elliot Gould has a very fine quality of stillness in this and many other scenes.
Well, it's almost a reflection of the robotic nature of Martino, that he in himself, in his vocal delivery, is very often in a sort of narrow range and rhythm. So you get sometimes more human feeling out of Martino, Joe Bova, than you do out of Elliot Gould. There's one scene later on where, in the examinations, where Elliot, I think, breaks into a very nice smile, and you suddenly think, oh yeah, there's a human being there, which is interesting.
He lost that stillness later on in his career when he got very busy, very twitchy. Elliot. Trevor Howard's very good here, isn't he?
Oh, he's a fine actor, you know.
I mean, one forgets how good he was.
He was a consummate screen actor.
You get used to it quite soon. Oh, no.
I mean, because it was very much a dialogue film, they tried to give a little movement where it was possible without distraction of the actors and the camera, like this one. That could have been a shot standing still, but we needed a little bit of development of to keep the scene visually a little more interest and progressing, rather than do this in a series of cuts or static shots. This has been a tracking shot for, what, a minute and a half now.
And Howard, although later in his career, could still master pages of dialogue at this time.
Yeah.
There's no reason for not telling me that. Huh?
He is consummate.
This group covers Martino's child.
You see all this evidence gathering. Again, you had to get the collection of the right stills, all the art direction and the research into the various characters and pre-production of getting the photographs ready for various scenes, etc., etc. It's quite exacting on the art department.
And they would have to know, of course, who's cast
Absolutely,
for the still sessions.
absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. So all the transitions here are quite carefully worked out before we shoot. You know, I know it goes from cut scene A with Trevor, cut scene B with Elliot, but the transitions via photographs and locations and camera moves and revelations of where we are now with whom was very carefully plotted in advance.
A very nice old-fashioned period tape recorder there.
Was it a photograph or something?
I think so.
So you get the feeling that it's a never-ending interrogation and revelation, shifting side to side of the curtain, the Iron Curtain, if you like, but still maintaining a narrative continuum. You never stand still. It's advancing all the time.
But it is a very complex timeline, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're never in any doubt when and where you are.
Yeah, I hope not.
First of all, he was always very busy. Looked after his father's tractor at the age of 11. He was always building things, repairing things, taking bits and putting...
Every time you think you get a clue to discovery, you realise it's been double tracked by the other side or double queried by the other side. So it's like being on a detective treadmill, if you like. You're always ending up where you first started.
This is a scene where Elliot Gould shows that great quality of stillness. He clearly looks as though he's concentrating, which I think is a hard thing for an actor to do.
I've heard stories about a very clever American character actor. The producer told me, you know that wonderful look of intense concentration he has? I said, yes. He said, you know what he's thinking of? I said, no, he's thinking of the last bet he made at the horse track. He was an inveterate gambler, and that was on his mind all the time. So that look of concentration had nothing to do with the part at all.
It wasn't Walter Matthau, was it?
No.
He had a similar problem with the horses. Now, you deliberately don't show the child, Martino, here.
Absolutely.
That's a conscious decision.
Yeah, we had this thing of all the flashbacks were done as though it was the camera was Martino. One, because it then saved trying to have the character before his crash, you know, with his ordinary head, and we thought that would be not as interesting as never seeing him beforehand. So you wouldn't be comparing, is that him, really him, or anything else? So it's better not to see the real Martino as an adult. And so we worked out this device of Martino would be the camera in all the flashbacks.
It's very effective. It's nice to hear the explanation.
Yeah.
This sequence with the photos on the walls of Lenin and Marx, would they be recognised in the potential audience land of the Midwest?
Well, I don't know. They were pretty iconic. I mean, especially if you think of the war and the Cold War, where the Eastern or communist propaganda was rife. I can't believe that Lenin and Stalin, maybe not so much Engels, but Lenin, Stalin and Marx were not familiar. Certainly not necessarily as particular names, but as the evil ones, if you like.
What did you talk about?
And it does help, obviously, in the dressing, and telling us where we are.
But it's very nice in the timeline not to see the years come up or the months or any of that.
Awful.
Tell me about the water pump. Which water pump? There's only one.
There's this bit where it does his nice smile. It's almost the only very genuine little moment of his performance in the whole film, of that lighter side of the character. It's very refreshing.
My mother had a hell of a time drawing water from the old...
Was Elliot Gould still married to Barbara Streisand at the time?
I don't think so.
So I built a new one.
I don't think so.
11.
Good.
When we were filming, he used to go off and practice, do a lot of basketball by himself. Shoot hoops for the exercise.
Only telling you what you already know.
I don't know much about your Uncle Lucas. Is that when people started calling you Luke?
Whose decision was it for Trevor Howard to play with an accent?
I suppose it was mine. He couldn't he had to be non-English American. And I think we wavered between, was it German or Russian? I think we came down basically with the Russian rather than the German, as being the arch manipulators.
He's very good. Did he have a coach?
I don't think so. I think it's one of those, you want foreign, I give you foreign performances, just as he did with the Irish in Catholics. I liked all these scenes in Miami because the light is quite different there from the German sombre and depressing and the prison and all those things. We get quite a different look with sunlight and water and performance. And I'm quite fond of those sequences. I think they're a very useful refresher in the film. Go from this to the sunlight and water.
And he gave me my room.
What was he paying Tonino?
I don't know. That's not true. Why are you lying to me? I'm not lying. I don't know.
It's very interesting lighting, isn't it?
Yes.
A little noirish.
Well, that's the root of noir is, interestingly, of course, in German expressionism.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fine.
You were signing Tonino's paychecks. Why?
When my Uncle Lucas was away, I would...
No.
It's interesting, too, that that's his real voice, that because when you have robots and things like that, you tend to automatically sync them.
That's right, or distort them.
Yes.
We didn't want to go that route. Otherwise it would dehumanise him totally. And I think one of the essences of the film was to keep the humanity behind the mask.
You do want to go back, don't you?
Yes. We would care more than if there was a machine voice.
I find a check.
Right. Why'd they call you Luke?
I told you before.
And we now increased the pace of the cutting because the interrogation speeded up. Now we're into a montage, so we now use music.
It's very inventive here.
Hmm?
The music is very inventive
Yeah,
here.
yeah. It's very well edited too.
Well, he was good, Norman. It's a shame he became a plumber, I always thought.
Oh.
My name is Lucas Martino.
So I don't think we overdo those little moments either. We give just enough to create the impression and get out of it, you know. I don't think we indulge ourselves in those little special effects sequences. I like to think we don't.
We fitted an overhead pickup.
I think it's a little before its time, to be honest.
That's very kind of you. Was that a criticism?
No, I think you're more used to it in the 70s and later 70s and towards the 80s than you are now. I think it might have disturbed older audiences.
But it's interesting, I was doing that sort of cutting on television way before this film was made. And then it wasn't you and I was doing it. I mean, God almighty, it goes back to Giga Vertov.
Indeed.
You think he's faking?
It's worth mentioning while you're on cutting that, of course, this would have been cut on film. It wouldn't have been done electronically when it's easier to do that kind of fast cutting. It would have been physically...
Yeah, I mean, I was an editor, so I remember cutting with bits of, after the hard joiner, bits of sellotape and scissors, which is all you needed to cut. And nowadays, of course, you can't make a cut at all unless you've got the machinery. And when something used to go wrong with the editing equipment in those days, all you did was change a light bulb.
That's right.
Nowadays, you had to have a team of experts coming in for a day.
What's wrong? You can't mean that. Sit down and answer the question.
Questions! What about skin pores, enzyme patterns, voice prints?
Physical tests for a body like yours just have not been invented yet. The ones we've tried hurt you and prove nothing. You know that.
My fingerprints.
It's good dialogue here.
Sure, I know whose arm that is. I'll let that arm go anywhere it likes. It's the rest of you.
Then use my mind. Let me go back to work. There's no one else in the world that can finish Neptune the way it should be done. Let me prove it that way.
No way.
I think with his limitations on facial expression, the use of arms and hands was vital to him.
All you can see is security. You don't seem to understand the other aspects of the situation. Now, the State Department wants to get on with it.
See, it's a long explanatory scene. Try to liven it up by putting it in a restaurant. But basically it's still face explaining, face listening, argument, discussion. The pace increases a bit here because the other actors push it along.
But it's also nice to see another location that is non-military,
Absolutely,
unlike
yeah.
an English film where it'd probably be in a pub or a Scotland Yard.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, of course you can create sets, but to actually film on the right locations is an enormous advantage.
All that information, those memories, that knowledge of how to act.
Looks like real food too.
Probably.
Someone taught to be Martina.
And of course in those days you could have your hero smoke.
Oh, and crazy. I mean, he liked his cigars earlier.
We haven't learned that yet.
Heller, when we send an agent over the line to them, we just don't give him the right papers and let him get on with it. We give him the right coins, door keys, cigarettes. We give him photographs printed on the right kind of paper with the right kind of chemicals. We even put the right fluff and dust in his pockets, and that's not all. We give him memories of things that never happened to him. We train him to walk and talk.
So the reaction shots are very good, I think. I mean, they're reflecting the audience, listening to this with sort of looks of understanding and query, which always keeps the Elliot character progressing on with his explanations.
I think that's very true, and I also think it's something you lose today in films as fast-moving as, say, the Bourne pictures.
Yeah. Where they're working on the assumption that the reactions are instantaneous and the audience are much more interested in the ride than the character, I think. I mean, I'm swept along by them, but I'm not so interested in them.
I think that's true.
Or are we just so conditioned to understanding this double-crossing, double-playing, double identity thing now? We don't need explanations. We just said, right, someone's pretending to be someone else, now let's get on with it. Shoot them or throttle them or chase them.
Well, generally expedition scenes are shot, but they're the first things to go at previews these days.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's very good here, Elliot. Convincing.
because he's talking in a relaxed place, he's more relaxed in the explanations.
Good one over on me. It could be now. And if I make a wrong decision, my friend, all our kids could end up snorting vodka and eating borscht with chopsticks.
It's a good reaction because it allows the audience to laugh if they thought of laughing.
He won't wake,
Not for some hours.
but he'll talk.
About some things. Not the important ones, I think.
Neptune?
I think not. Only personal things that inhibit him.
This is where you realise that his voice is very
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah.
David de Keyser with Trevor Howard.
Now.
Is it just we that know it's familiar?
Well, he did Lino Ventura, didn't he?
Yeah,
for
on
you
Medusa,
in
yeah.
Medusa Touch.
Oh, he did everybody. I mean, I was just wondering if the audiences in general know that.
They don't know about revoicing.
No,
David did actually play a lead in The Designated Mourner.
absolutely,
with,
yeah.
with Mike
Yeah,
Nichols.
he's a good actor.
That's good. Now, Luca, I want you to tell me about Edith. You and Edith,
The little Edith theme coming in.
were you in love with her?
I'm going to ask you something which I hope you don't think is impertinent about the women in this film,
Yeah,
because they seem quite undercast. Kay Torberg as Edith and Joy Garrett as Barbara. It seems that they have relatively small parts that might have been made more indelible by larger names. Was it? I don't know whether it was budget or whether they were friends of the producer or whatever.
No.
They're both adequate, but they just seem undercast.
oh, you mean in name or talent?
A bit of both, really.
I know they weren't names, but I thought they didn't take away of a familiar face in a small part. Didn't exaggerate the character. I mean, I never thought about that. I just thought, does this person look right and can she act? And I was convinced by the performance and the look and the difference between the two women. I never thought, oh God, they got Lee Remick in for that. Fantastic. There was no distraction of, wasn't she in? You know, those things. It's like the American agents, that you didn't know them, and they added an air of credibility to them.
Yes, that's true. I think it is consistent and part of the style of the
I
film.
think casting them more name-wise would have thrown it a bit out of balance.
Interesting.
You mean to you?
I thought they both had very interesting, different persona and faces.
It won't make things any easier for us.
It's a nice location too,
Where is it?
off Miami. Nice to get the water and the sun and the wind. I love that shot. There's sort of reflections of that metallic sheen again.
Now, will you tell me about the girl in your uncle's restaurant? About Barbara? Will you tell me about the other girl? About Barbara? Tell me about her.
What happened, Luke? Did you have a fight?
She's quite a different personality to
That girl, Edith.
the other girl.
She hasn't been in to eat recently.
What do you know about Edith?
I can't remember who did the voice there.
Oh, Joy Garrett's revoiced, is she?
No, not her. The Martina voice.
Oh, right.
No, she's she. It's the voice off.
I'd probably be with you now if we were. Would I?
I'm not vain.
It had to be different from the voice that he does as a robot, Ed.
Yes.
But I can't remember who did it.
For anyone. Certainly not Edith.
Do you feel that the talking to the camera works or not?
I don't mind what it's like.
You don't.
I'm in
sure.
two minds.
Yeah.
I don't know it. And to be honest, it's how it is, so I accept it. I don't think it doesn't work. I'm just not, personally, I'm just not comfortable with it. But again, you need to see it on a big screen in the cinema, as it was intended.
You mean it's too big?
I think it might be better too big, But here, watching it on TV, it seems strange.
No, I mean the actual frame size of the face. I mean, he's supposed to be lying next to her, so it can't be.
Yes, indeed. No, it can't be. I mean, it's. I think it achieves what it sets out to achieve, and more than that, I think you can't ask for.
Did you make it with her? Huh? Did you make it with her?
Mind your own business.
Well, the phrase "make it," I wonder.
Yeah, just wondering.
Carefully considered.
Yeah,
that's what we went with.
Yeah.
You have no rights anywhere. The United States Constitution was not made for metal men. It doesn't say any place that guys with metal heads and eyes that click every time they open have any rights.
I quite like the dialogue that John's given. The sort of slightly demotic, semi-slangy, colloquial.
And her, right? So you tell me, and if she checks out your story, we'll be one step nearer base.
Barbara we can't find. We're tracing her, but no luck so far. Only thing we do know is she moves a lot. Edith, we have an address for in Miami. Unmarried, works hard, straight. Uncle Lucas, passed away 12 years back. Kid Tonino, killed in Vietnam.
Okay, what about Stark and Haywood?
You said to stay away from the Neptune people.
Stark was his teacher. Check him. As for Haywood, you can check into their school days.
Well, let's see. Okay, Haywood Franklin, born November 16, 1930. Father Edward, mother Mary. Degrees Bachelor of Science, University of Miami, 1950. Master of Science, University of Miami, 1951. Awards Marshall Foundation Grant, 1952. Rothman Science Award, 1954. Organization Phi Beta Kappa Sigma Chi. Joined civil service in 1956. Research and development ed. Do you have any more details you would like to know?
When did he first meet Martino?
See, it was in 1948 under Professor Starkey. They both graduated magna cum laude.
See, when you're giving facts, you can afford to give them a bit of pace. It's when you're actually interpreting the facts that you have to slow the dialogue a bit.
Haywood left the project this year and went to Tokyo as a consultant. In fact, Haywood seems to be pretty much Martino's equal, scientifically speaking.
When did they first meet?
Under Professor Stark. Both graduated with honors and stayed on and worked as a research team together. 1956, Martino started the work that led to Neptune. Haywood joined him soon after. This year, Haywood left the project to go to Tokyo as a consultant. He almost seems to be Martino's equal, scientifically speaking.
You think it? How? Like that? You got it. I have to work it out step by step.
John Stewart, a familiar face, but an unfamiliar name.
I first met him or was aware of him when we did this film. I mean, obviously we cast him. I think we cast him in New York. These character actors, and I think we filmed this in a library in Munich. But it was a wonderful location. I mean, especially for this sort of situation of the handheld camera and being Martino and being able to sit down and have the conversations.
Let anybody use it.
It's much easier to have him sitting down, so you're not aware of any disparity in height when you try to insinuate that he is Martino.
The only people
Later.
The only people who should control science, who should put it to use, are scientists. Not generals, not politicians. Us. Us, Frank? Or you?
Haywood has nothing to do with Neptune. But he used to have, no? He was taken off it months ago. Why? I'm not going to tell you anything about Neptune. Look at yourself, Doc. Look what you look like.
I know what I look like.
We didn't have time to make it better, believe me. I had to ask you questions and we didn't have the time. But now if you answered my questions, you can go back like a human being. I promise you. Or your face would be a little stiff.
Trevor says questions and questions.
kiss, cry again. You bastard. You don't have to go back for 2 or 3 months. What you have to tell me would take only 2 weeks, and then Kaufman could start to build you a better face before it is too late. If he has to wait much longer, it will be too late.
It's great reading, though. He's so good
After
there.
I've had him for over 6 months. I can't undo that knot in 10 days.
You tried everything?
Everything.
What next? If you haven't managed anything in 10 days, I don't see any reason why you ever should.
There are still a few people left who read.
It's quite difficult in a film like this, where so much dialogue and duologues, to actually think of new ways or not new ways, but of ways of shooting it, which aren't getting over familiar and repetitive. Very difficult, I think.
I don't know yet. We've run out of time.
I think you've achieved that very well, because there was no doubt in my mind that it was either over-familiar or repetitive at all.
Even little moves, anything to inject variation into
Is it Besser?
straight cuts.
He can do it. He thinks he has a better idea than me. He's wrong. Is it him?
I said it's classified.
Could be Haywood. No. He's been out of touch for months. He could catch up. Rogers, the one thing that kept me alive while they were doing this to me was knowing that I'd have my work to come back to when I got home. Don't you understand? It's not my job. It's my life.
We fly back tomorrow.
I like that.
It's such a relief from the claustrophobia of all the
and then
military
just this
stuff.
full frame blue sky. I think it works well.
Where was the airfield?
Munich, sorry. Munich. As I remember, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Can I have a cigarette, Finchley?
Yeah, sure.
It's probably irrelevant, but I'm not sure this wasn't the airport
What are you staring at?
that was used by the terrorists at the Munich
It's not my throat.
Olympics
Sorry, I didn't know I was staring.
when they made their escape
Right.
or the shootout. I'd have to check. It's not relevant anyway, other than a thought.
Ready if you are.
Very, very interesting, given the resonance of this kind of
Yeah,
plot.
but it may be just a wild surmise on my part.
Now, this is composer John Cameron showing some John Barry influence here, because these were the days of James Bond at his height.
I'm trying to remember a time when they weren't James Bond at his height.
Now, all this car action that we're about to see, was this choreographed by Remy Julien?
I'm sure it must have been.
And how many cameras did you use?
It must have been at least 2, but I can't, to be honest, remember. It was interesting. You see the guys in the sailor's uniform?
Yeah.
That was a translation mistake. In the script, it said the American Guards were Marines. And the Germans thought Marines meant sailors.
How interesting. I just thought it was a fashion thing of
No.
the outfit.
And so we tried to rectify it later on, wherever, whenever we had the guards at the embassy, which probably shot after all this, to establish that Marines meant Marines and not the German translation of Marine into sailor. I said, what are the sailors doing here?
Ah, the perils of international co-production.
Absolutely. I just thought this whole sequence went on a bit.
But it's helped immeasurably by the soundtrack.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's pretty good as these things go, but it doesn't compare with... I mean, in the open, you don't get any of the sort of pyrotechnics you get from car chases now in a city, for instance. So there's only so many obstacles one can usefully impede. I just have a feeling it's a bit repetitive. It's not my favourite part of filmmaking. I mean, you get a storyboard, you get stuntmen, you get the drivers, you line up the shot, bang. Always works, but it
takes so long to do.
When I come across an action sequence in a film, I draw a heave sigh and think, right.
Well,
for me, I find them a problem because they're not. What I like about films is working with actors. I don't find working with cars interesting.
That he's a real Martino. And this proves it. They think we're bringing him back. They tried to get rid of him before we took him back to Neptune.
That wasn't even real out there. You put a submachine gun in the hands of a professional and he doesn't kill anyone, you're out of your minds.
Well, even professionals make mistakes.
Not Azarin. If he'd wanted to kill him, he would have. That was Azarin trying to make us believe we have the real Martino. They want him to go back to work on Neptune.
On behalf of the audience, I have to say thank you for this exposition because I
yeah,
needed
absolutely.
it.
You need it, you see. This is what was intriguing. Every question the audience wants to ask is, in fact, asked.
Do anything he likes. You watch him. There's nothing physical for us to recognize, so know his mind. Know how Martino would think. He'll know you're watching him, whoever he is, so a lot of his actions may well be meant to mislead us. We don't even know that he's not going to blow himself up, so I want to know if he starts taking himself to pieces. If someone stands in his feet and puts a dime in his mouth, I want to hear how much that person weighs. But one thing is certain, if he's a ringer, they'll have taught him to find his way around the city in the dark. He'll know every street, every house, any place he might have been to as a boy.
And you really sent him out into the Florida
Absolutely,
streets?
Yep, this is reality. It works because you're entitled for the people to be aware of him, because for obvious reasons. So you don't feel like saying, don't look at the camera, don't take any notice of him. You want them to take notice of him. And it was nice trying to get a girl that didn't look too unlike the waitress in his earlier flashback, which gives rise to him looking across at her.
How long were you in Florida?
I think it was only about a week. I can't remember exactly, about a week.
And this is Joseph Bova all the time, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. And of course the shots are absolutely legitimate, you know. Yeah. People aren't looking at the camera, they're looking at him. They're very effective, aren't they?
Yes.
can't remember whether those birds went off cue or whether they were just there. I'm very pleased with them, though.
Well, Colin Miller certainly helped them with the
Absolutely,
flappings
yeah.
and the footsteps.
Is Colin still working?
I think it would be fair to say he's in semi-retirement, but yes, he'd love to work. He's still available.
In the great era of the sound designer.
It strikes me that it's a very American thing to see someone who looks like that and not query it and not point. And it's just another strange thing in Florida. This is what Groucho used to call spy stuff.
Spy stuff. I know exactly what he means. Prop acting, I call it. When I'm going to shoot that, I always get bored with those shots. I know they're necessary, but I think, oh God. Give me an actor's face every time. You can keep your car chases.
Edith Hayes.
What do you have to look up her address for? She hasn't moved for 8 years.
Because if he's really Martino, he wouldn't know that.
Okay, keep on going. Let me know if you turn up any others.
He's sitting outside her apartment.
Why doesn't he go up?
Because he's scared.
Of what? Of Edith knowing he's not Martino, or of Edith seeing him like that?
I don't know. Either way, I don't think this is going to work. He's not going to.
He's very effective, Ed, isn't he?
Very good. I like the contrast here that in Germany they all wear jackets, and of course in Florida they don't.
Yeah.
They're in shirt sleeves.
Indian folk on, sir. Mail order.
Franklin Hayward, 208 Magnolia.
You know something, Finch? Sometimes I think Colonel Azarin is pissing in his pants laughing at us.
I love all those colours. Sun. We certainly aren't in Germany.
That's for sure.
He's going in. Who do you got in the street?
Spencer.
You join him just in case.
For what?
I don't know, but the next half hour is going to be pretty rough on both of them.
I think this moment when she opens the door is very strong. And we let it play. We didn't try and hurry it up or anything. The scene's in her reaction, not on him. Because he can give nothing.
Yes,
Edith?
I'm Edith Hayes, yes. What do you want?
It's Luke, Edith. Lucas Martino.
Luke?
I've been in an accident, Edith. My face is odd. I don't want to frighten you.
Let me see.
That's the understatement of the picture. Did you use an American crew for the American shoot?
Don't think so. I'm pretty sure we didn't. What a terrible question I can't answer, but I'm sure we got Petrus over.
Yes, because there's a marvellous consistency. That's why I was noted in the handheld particularly.
I don't think it was easy getting permission. I honestly can't remember. What a terrible thing. I can't remember.
I think Florida is a right-to-work state, so you could have imported people. I don't know if it was then.
We'd know from the credits, anyway.
Yes, of course.
I thought these scenes between them worked very well. Very believable. From her.
He's going in. Is there something a man has that makes people
I think she had a
recognize him, no matter what he looks
bit of reputation in American theatre. New York theatre.
Right.
If she believes it, then
I liked her. I thought she had a...
Here we are.
Well, whatever.
They're moving into the sitting room. We'll pick them up in a couple. There they go.
It's nice with these big windows, so you're always aware you're on location, you know. There's not studio-bound sets. Such a contrast with the German side of things.
You have a very nice apartment, Edith. You fixed it up very comfortably.
I spent a lot of time on it. Would you like a drink? Can you have a drink?
I drink, I eat, I smoke. Yes, thank you.
Do you mind talking about it?
I used to. Then I wished I were dead.
What would you like? I have scotch.
Scotch. Fine scotch will be fine.
What made you change your mind about being dead?
My work.
That figures.
I almost called you this afternoon to ask about coming over, but I was afraid you'd refuse.
You should have known you'd be welcome.
When I was in the hospital, Edith, I spent a great deal of time thinking about us. We never really knew each other, did we? One of the reasons I stopped by today, because I wanted to apologize for that. I never knew how to treat you. I think I always thought of you as some kind of a problem to be solved, not as a person.
Why else?
Huh?
You said that was one of the reasons you wanted to visit.
Well, I knew that you wouldn't make me feel uncomfortable. Ask questions, stare at me. Just as before, Edith, I'm being very selfish. The FBI is not sure whether I can be trusted. They'll be investigating you.
Why should they be interested in me?
Because they're as anxious as I am to prove that I'm Lucas Martino. They're giving me a chance to establish my identity for them. You see, Edith, if we can find just one thing.
Elliot, so good there. It's hard to look as though you're concentrating in that little eye movement.
That might convince them.
I could tell them how we met in the park.
I told them that already.
We took a boat trip.
It's very well operated, this, isn't it? The cameraman.
Yes.
That was in the spring of '56, wasn't it?
It was summer. I remember I wore a woolen sweater, and I got much too hot, and you let one sleeve fall into the water.
That's the kind of thing.
And I had to pay because you dropped your money getting into the boat?
Yes, and we didn't come back by boat. We came back over the causeway.
Excuse me 1 second. I have something in the oven.
He's still in the sitting room. She seems to have gone to the kitchen. Does that sound like a Russian agent to you?
They sound like a couple of high school kids.
Nice moment.
She thinks it's him.
Well, Rogers will tell you that's a trained agent. You take a few pieces of information, you talk some generalities, fool somebody.
Oh, can't guess at all.
Okay, now there are two ways to get over there, aren't there? You can go over on a boat, you can go over on the causeway. Now, if you go over on the boat, the chances are 50-50.
I like his performance. It's so naturalistic, isn't it? Very New Yorky.
They're very good. Did you rehearse much with them?
No.
Will you stay to eat?
American actors have a sort of ease in front of the camera that
Thanks, Edith. I really do
they
have
sort
to
of
get back to my
naturally
hotel.
invent mannerisms or detail
You know,
or performance. They're very at ease with it.
Lucas Martino. I have no reason not to welcome seeing him again. I'm lonely, too.
I'll call you.
Good scene. No music, you see.
It's impressive.
Play the emotions.
You did very well, Miss Hayes. I'm sure you can be of help. I'm sorry if it was a bit of an ordeal for you. I think it's best if we leave our equipment installed for the time being.
It's very robotic in these deliverers, isn't it?
He's liable to come back.
Unemotional.
He won't come back.
See, that's a good line. Good performance, too.
We're beginning to wonder what kind of man Rogers is.
Mm.
He looks lost.
I better go see if he's all right.
Dr. Martino, you okay?
Finchley?
Look, you want to go to your hotel, I'll take you.
Oh, thanks. I'm not going back to my hotel.
Well, you just said...
Said what? You've been listening, haven't you? You've got her apartment, Bob.
Look, tell Rogers I got a problem with Martino. I'm going to have to follow him.
Ed Grover does that very well.
Yeah.
Dr. Martino!
Now that's the right length of action sequence.
Absolutely.
Functional, dramatic, and to the point, and shocking. Doesn't outstay its welcome.
Nice use of music too.
Yeah.
Punctuated.
I'm sorry about Finchley.
Is there anybody else you can think of who might help?
What about Barbara?
We finally found her. She wouldn't recognize her own father. She's completely out of her head.
What condition is the farm in?
I'm sorry?
I said, what condition is the farm in, my parents' farm? I haven't been there since my mother died.
Is there something there you think might help us?
Not us. Me.
I don't think I understand you.
I've had enough, Mr. Rogers. I have to go somewhere where I can be on my own.
The farm's pretty run down. We could arrange for you to take a trip up to the Canadian Lakes if you like. The Bureau's got a couple of 100 acres there. There's some cabins.
I guess I still own the farm. I might as well go there to get used to living on my own again. I have some money saved. I'll need it to get the farm started.
What's happened? Suddenly you've changed your mind?
Not suddenly. Hardly Edith. Finchley. Mostly me. I can't take any more.
What about Neptune?
I wouldn't be able to cope. You think panic has something to do with the heart racing, the nerves getting tense, the breath getting labored? Mine doesn't. But I'm in a constant state of
So
panic.
this is one continuous take.
My mind
Wide, tracking out, tracking in. Then we have a cut.
all the time. Except that if I did more,
It's very impressive operating.
make me scream more until I wouldn't be able to stop. No. If you would let me go back to Neptune, straight back, I might have been able to cope. I'd have been with people I know, people who don't look at you, your face, what you look like, just at you. Your mind, your work, your ideas. You won't let me hide among them, so I'll hide on my farm instead.
We're only just starting. I've got a checklist of people who knew you at college. There's Professor Stark.
You'll have to get by without me. You'll know where to find me.
You said the only thing that kept you alive was the thought of getting back to work. We may clear you. You could be back at Neptune inside the month.
I think this location was in Germany.
We need Martino. It's as simple as that.
It's a great location.
Terrific scale.
Yeah.
There's no one else can finish it.
And that metal man?
If he's Martino, then we need him.
If, that's a hell of an if.
Yes, but if he's not Martino...
Gave an idea of the stature of the program they were working on.
Yes. I don't think he could carry it forward, but he'd have been able to understand it.
Why was he taken off it?
You've seen security here. Let's say Haywood was temperamentally unable to operate under the restrictions imposed by security.
You mean he resented it?
Just he didn't feel happy. He was insecure.
Could the metal man be Frank Haywood?
He could, if he wasn't dead.
Ta-da! Great. Plotting, writing.
If we can't break him, the Americans couldn't break him either, could they?
No. Why should they want to?
Neither him nor somebody like him.
And now, as an audience, we really don't know.
Yeah.
Would you send in my visitor, please? I once asked you if you could make me another one like that. You can?
Oh, yes. It's relatively easy now we have done it once.
I can't send Martino back. They'd never forgive me if I sent him back. Come in. Ah, welcome, at last. At last. Dr. Corfu, this is the gentleman I was just discussing. Frank Haywood, I'd like to present you to my colleague, Dr. Corfu. It's a pleasure to meet you, Doctor.
All these shots designed to keep the revelation of whoever's coming in to the last possible moment. Rather than hear the door knock and cut to the door and you see him come in, you wait till he reveals himself.
I appreciate something less unnerving than parachuting into the Black Sea.
When you arrived safely, that's the main thing.
And I ruined a perfectly good suit in the process.
We get them sitting down, so you're much less time to be aware of the height disparity between this actor and Joe Bova, the original Martino. So you can't
Doesn't matter who you
be
think you may or may not be.
not be confused.
Can't condone a possible foreign agent working on a project as sensitive as this, sir.
It's no longer your decision.
If this man is not Martino, sir, you can be certain that Colonel Azarin's been planning this coup for a long time.
Neptune must go forward. Public relations alone make that desirable.
Public relations are hardly
I'm
as...
not used to having to explain State Department decisions.
He's good, Bruce Burr.
Dangerous
I'd worked with him before in
We put him back to work.
television.
If he's not who he says he is, then it's quite probable he'll make a mess of things. We'll quietly retire.
I think he was Canadian, lived in London for a long time.
If you will watch him, be quite sure he doesn't blow everybody up.
He has a nice air of authority.
Yeah.
Rest of the world will know Neptune's on the road again. Here's Martino. It really will be on the road again, and for that, we're prepared to risk a very great deal indeed. Now you go and bring him back.
That is Luke.
Dr. Cortu saved his life. He was dead for a while. You think the Americans would let him go back to work looking like that?
I don't see why not.
They might be suspicious of him, who he is.
Why should they be? Identity doesn't depend just on physical appearance.
Quite so. It's rare to meet a man like you, Frank, prepared to give up so much for his beliefs.
I don't think of it as giving anything up.
It's positively evil, Trevor, isn't it?
We would like you to go to America again. Would you do that for us, Frank?
That's impossible. They think I'm dead.
Not as yourself. We would change your identity.
To whom?
We would like you to go to Neptune.
I'd never be allowed to go near that. In any case, there are too many people there who know me too.
All the audience's questions are being raised, you see.
The image on the television, was it matted or was it projected from inside?
I think it was probably projected. I don't think it was matted. It's terrible quality.
16mm, presumably.
No, I couldn't go back like that.
You wouldn't have to stay like that.
Again, I can't remember.
It would only be temporary.
I'd never get away with it. They'd find out.
No, we will teach you everything about him. Here he's being asked every tiny little detail of his life. You will learn to be Martino. For a man of your intellect, Frank.
All the pre-plotting now makes sense. All those detailed questions to Martino about his background and his life. He's now coming full circle.
How would you make me look like that?
Don't be worried about that. He was a wreck. You are not damaged. For you, it's a simple procedure.
The Americans will believe it's Martino because they want to believe it. And then you can go back to Neptune. The culmination of your life's work, Frank.
I don't know. If they didn't believe me, if they didn't let me come back, I mean, what would I do?
Don't worry.
No, what would I do then?
Until we could bring you back, you could go to Martino's farm. It would not be for long.
I'm pretty sure we shot this in Florida.
The farm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Hi, Mr. Rogers. Where is it? It's in the field. Morning, Willis. Didn't get lost for a little while.
Tough one to do a handheld on, but there's too lots of action going on which distract a bit.
Yes.
Rogers. Social visit? Not entirely. I've come to ask you a few more questions.
All right.
I knew we could depend on you, Frank.
If there's no other way.
To find out about Neptune, no.
I've come to ask you to go back to Neptune.
You made up your mind at last.
If you like.
You wouldn't ask me if you weren't sure.
Of course not.
Well, are you sure, aren't you?
I'm not.
But everybody else is.
More or less. Will you believe that I didn't like treating you the way I had to?
I believe that, certainly. Doesn't matter.
It does to me. I have the job of persuading you to forgive me, relent, and go back to work.
Wherever the professional. They just said it doesn't matter who or what he is, go down there and bring him back.
That's right.
Don't worry. You'll be all right, Frank.
Coming after filming The National Health, it was familiar territory. I'd like to think it's very economical storytelling.
Well, but it is. I mean, it's interesting that Elliot's character Rogers asked the questions that we, the audience, are asking all the time.
Whoever I am.
That's right, whoever you are.
I'm smiling, Rogers. Perhaps you can't tell, but I'm smiling.
Will you come back? Will you accept the fact that you've won?
I'm a farmer now, and I'm accepted for what I really am.
What you really are?
A man with a metal face.
Is that all?
I have my memories, but they're wrong. They're memories of a previous life when I was someone else. Doesn't matter who. I know. I have my dreams, but they're different now. I once hoped to change the whole world with my work. Now I change the earth, not the world. I like it here. Doesn't matter what I look like. I am, and my small world accepts me for what I am.
You don't regard this as running away?
Sort of Napoleonic posture, isn't it?
Staying alive.
The more I hear now, the more certain I grow that I was wrong.
Careful, Mr. Rogers. That could be me being extra clever at the end. No, I don't bear any grudges. I'm here not because of what you did, but because of what I did.
The vanity of martyrdom.
Partly. Also, the vanity of achievement.
So this farm will be your only contribution to the development of the human race?
Look at me, Rogers. Look at me really hard. What I used to be is buried deep underneath what you see now. In the end, you know, you're quite right to doubt my identity. I'm a metal man, staring out of a metal skull. Human eyes, peering at the world from a metal face. But inside...
They were two alternative titles taken from this dialogue, Prisoner of the Skull and Robo-Man, that this film is known as in certain foreign territories.
Is it?
Anything we care to do to them.
You can walk, talk, move around like a normal human being. There's many that can't.
I know.
And this an understated message, presumably.
Yeah.
You're not really sure I'm here.
I'm just wondering whether we had one shot too many in this, of the danger warning on Frank, which tells us he's going to die, so that we give the game away too early. Do you think, or not?
But Haywood, I'm not even
Hard to
sure
say.
he knew what had
We hadn't had that warning beep, 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 beep sign, but just carried on with Martino. This would have been more powerful, wouldn't it? We'd saved the revelation till now. Not a shot before.
What are you going to do with
Better go away and recut it.
What can I do? I'll have to send him back.
20 years after he directed B Westerns, William Wyler went back into the vaults and recut something and took something out that he didn't like.
Really?
Mm.
Can you remember what it was?
Tell them I'm not Lucas Martino anymore.
Heathcliff, probably.
Bye, Luke.
By Luke. There's familiar.
It's touching, though.
Yeah.
So what's the moral, Jack? What's the purpose?
That the individual retains his individuality in the face of state manipulation, or tries to. Uneven battle.
Great theme.
Funny, at the end of Catholics, we have a helicopter taking off, looking down.
But there's nothing like it, like this, when it works, is there?
No,
I mean, it's a sense of scale and grandeur. And don't leave your seat just yet. Well, as Who draws to its close, I'd like to thank very much Director Jack Gold for enlightening us on many, many points of the picture, and I hope you'll look at it again with a new eye and a new ear. Thank you very much, Jack.
My pleasure.